The old train car rested alone at the edge of a silent rail yard. Its metal skin was rough with rust and the windows were clouded with age. Weeds grew high around the wheels as if trying to hide it from the world. Most people saw only a broken thing left behind by time. Rose saw something else standing there with her hands in her jacket. She felt the weight of stories trapped inside the steel walls. The air around the car felt heavy and gentle at the same time. Rose had grown up in a small town where nothing new ever stayed. Her days were filled with work that paid just enough to survive. At night she listened to her grandmother speak of journeys and places. Those stories carried warmth even when money was scarce. When Rose saw the sign that said the car was for sale, her heart beat faster than her mind could explain. $500 felt like a risk and a calling together. People passing by slowed their cars and shook their heads. Some laughed softly as if the idea itself was funny. They wondered why anyone would want something so broken. Rose did not argue or explain her thoughts. She walked around the car touching the cold metal sides. Each mark felt like a memory asking to be remembered. She signed the paper before fear could take over. Moving the train car was harder than buying it. The truck strained as it pulled the heavy shell across town. Dust filled the air and neighbors stepped outside to watch. Some offered jokes while others offered silence. Rose kept her eyes forward and her hands steady. When the car finally rested on her land, she exhaled deeply. It felt like bringing home something that had been waiting. That night Rose stepped inside the train car alone. The floor creaked beneath her boots with every movement. Moonlight slipped through broken windows in thin lines. The smell of rust and old wood wrapped around her. She imagined laughter once filling the space. She imagined hands gripping seats during long rides. Her chest tightened with emotion she could not name. The inside was empty but not lifeless. Marks on the walls hinted at people who once leaned there. A loose seat rocked gently when touched. Rose ran her fingers along the edges with care. She whispered a promise to fix what was hurting. Not to make it new but to make it warm again. The train car seemed to hold its breath. The following morning Rose returned with simple tools. She wore gloves already stained from other jobs. The first scrape of rust echoed loudly through the car. It was tiring work that showed little reward at first. Sweat ran down her face as hours passed. Still she kept going, driven by quiet determination. Every piece cleaned felt like a small victory. As the sun lowered, Rose stepped back to look. Nothing looked beautiful yet, and nothing looked finished. But the car no longer felt forgotten to her. It felt like the beginning of something meaningful. She sat on the step watching the light fade. Tomorrow would bring more work and more doubt. Yet Rose knew she would return without hesitation. Morning light touched the train car and revealed every flaw it carried. Rose arrived early, carrying tools borrowed and bought with care. The silence around the rail yard felt different now, more awake. She opened the door and breathed in dust and old air. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from responsibility. This place now depended on her effort and patience. She began with the floor lifting boards one by one. Each piece told a quiet story through scratches and worn edges. Some boards were too weak and had to be removed gently. Others held firm as if refusing to leave their place. Rose stacked usable wood carefully beside the car. She whispered thanks to the ones she could save. Hours passed with aching arms and slow progress. The sun climbed higher and heat filled the metal space. Sweat soaked her shirt and dust clung to her skin. She stopped only to drink water and catch her breath. Doubt crept into her thoughts, asking if this was foolish. Rose pushed it aside and returned to work. By afternoon a sound broke the rhythm of scraping. Footsteps approached and stopped near the open door. A man named Tom stood there holding a box of nails. He lived nearby and had watched her work for days. He did not speak much, only nodded and stepped inside. From that moment, the work felt less heavy. Tom fixed loose supports while Rose cleaned the walls. They worked quietly, sharing tools and understanding. Occasionally he pointed out hidden damage she had missed. She listened grateful for another set of eyes. The train car slowly felt stronger beneath their hands. Trust grew without the need for many words. As evening came they uncovered old markings on the wall. Faded shapes and initials scratched by unknown travelers. Rose paused to study them with gentle focus. She chose not to remove those marks. They were part of the soul she wanted to protect. Tom agreed and smiled softly at her choice. They ended the day sitting on the ground outside. The sky turned orange and purple above the rail yard. Rose looked at the train car, now cleaner but still rough. She felt tired yet deeply satisfied inside. This was no longer a lonely project. It was becoming a shared purpose. That night Rose wrote plans by candlelight. She sketched ideas slowly, imagining warmth and meaning. The work ahead was still long and uncertain. But part 2 of the journey had changed everything. She was no longer fixing metal and wood alone. She was rebuilding hope piece by piece. The days began to feel connected like links in a long chain. Each morning Rose unlocked the train car with quiet focus. The smell inside slowly changed from rust to fresh wood. Light entered more freely through cleaned windows. The space no longer felt cold or forgotten. It felt patient, as if waiting for the next touch. Rose spent hours sanding the walls until her arms burned. Dust floated in the air and settled on her hair. She stopped often to wipe her face and drink water. Every smooth surface felt like a promise kept. The train car responded with gentle creaks, as if accepting the care it was receiving. Tom returned almost every afternoon without being asked. Sometimes he brought extra wood or old tools. Other times he brought nothing but steady presence. They spoke more now, sharing small stories. About work, about the town, about quiet dreams. The train car listened to all of it. One afternoon Rose found an old metal hook near the ceiling. It was bent but still strong and useful. She imagined bags once hanging there during long trips. Instead of removing it, she cleaned it carefully. Small choices like this mattered to her deeply. They kept the past alive without trapping it. As weeks passed, color entered the space slowly. Rose chose a warm shade that felt gentle. She painted carefully, moving around old marks. The walls began to glow softly in the light. Tom stepped back and nodded in approval. The car finally looked awake again. They worked through quiet evenings with open doors. Crickets sang outside as brushes moved inside. The world beyond the rail yard felt distant. Inside the car time slowed and softened. Rose often forgot how tired she was, because her heart felt full. One evening Rose brought a small wooden table inside. It was worn and uneven but solid. She placed it near the window where light poured in. Sitting there felt different from standing. She imagined someone resting there one day, finding peace without knowing why. Curtains came next, sewn from old fabric. The cloth carried gentle memories for Rose. She hung them carefully, measuring twice. When they finally rested in place, the car felt warmer and more human, as if it had begun to breathe. Tom discovered a hidden panel beneath a seat. They lifted it together with careful hands. Inside were old papers and a faded photo. A family stood smiling beside a train. Rose held the image with respect. They placed it safely near the door. That discovery changed how Rose saw the space. This was not just a project or idea. It was a keeper of moments and lives. Every traveler had left something behind. Not objects alone, but feelings and hopes. Rose felt responsible for all of it. At night she stayed longer than planned, sitting alone inside the finished corner, listening to wind brush against metal. The quiet felt kind, not empty. She felt guided by something unseen, as if the car trusted her now. By the end of the month, the change was clear. The train car no longer scared visitors away. People slowed when passing and looked inside. Some smiled, others grew silent. Rose watched from a distance with calm pride, knowing this was only the beginning. The morning Rose opened the train car to others felt unusually quiet. She stood beside the door unsure if anyone would actually come. The sky was pale and the air carried a gentle breeze. Tom arrived early and gave her a calm nod. They placed a small sign near the path without decoration. Then they stepped back and waited together. The first visitor was an elderly man walking slowly. He paused at the entrance and removed his hat. His eyes moved carefully across the walls and seats. He touched the wood as if greeting an old friend. His breathing changed and his shoulders relaxed. Rose watched silently, giving him space. Soon more people arrived one by one. Some came out of curiosity, others out of memory. A mother held her child close while stepping inside. A woman stopped near the window and covered her mouth. Tears rolled down her face without warning. No one asked her why. The train car filled with soft emotion and quiet voices. People spoke in whispers, as if in a sacred place. Some sat at the table while others stood still. Memories surfaced without being invited. Laughter appeared briefly, then faded into reflection. The space held every feeling gently. An old couple held hands near the center. They shared a look that needed no words. The man smiled while the woman wiped her eyes. They had met on a train long ago. Being here brought that moment back alive. Rose felt her chest tighten watching them. Tom stood near the door, guiding visitors calmly. He answered questions when asked and stepped back again. He had never seen a place affect people this way. It was not loud or dramatic. It worked quietly deep inside the heart. That made it more powerful. As the sun moved higher, the light shifted. Golden beams crossed the walls and floor. The curtains swayed gently with passing air. The photo near the door caught attention. People leaned close to study it, imagining the lives behind those faces. A young man sat alone near the window. He stared outside, lost in thought. After a long moment he stood and thanked Rose. His voice shook as he spoke. He said he felt calm for the first time in years. Then he left without another word. By late afternoon the guest book was nearly full. Pages carried messages written with care. Some thanked Rose while others thanked the space. A few wrote about loved ones now gone. The train car had given them a moment back. That alone felt like a gift. Rose stepped inside once the crowd thinned. She leaned against the wall, breathing slowly. This was never about attention or praise. It was about connection and remembrance. Seeing the effect confirmed her purpose. The journey had been worth every struggle. As evening approached, the last visitors left quietly. Rose closed the door gently and locked it. She rested her forehead against the cool metal. Tears finally came, not from sadness but release. The train car had become something greater. It had become a shared heart. The days after the opening felt quieter but heavier in meaning. Rose returned each morning with a new sense of purpose. The train car no longer felt like her project alone. It felt like a living place shaped by many hearts. She cleaned slowly, touching each surface with care. Every mark now carried fresh memory. People continued to visit even without announcements. Some came alone while others came together. They stepped inside with respect and unspoken understanding. Conversations stayed soft and movements remained gentle. The train car taught people how to behave. Rose watched this with silent wonder. Letters began arriving at her small mailbox. They came from nearby towns and distant places. Each letter carried a story sparked by the train car. Some spoke of loss, others of healing. Rose read them late at night by soft light. She answered each one with honest gratitude. Tom remained close, helping when needed. Sometimes he fixed small things without being asked. Other times he simply sat nearby, keeping quiet watch. Their shared work had built a strong bond. Not loud or dramatic, but steady and real. They understood each other without explanation. One afternoon a school group arrived quietly. Children stepped inside holding hands and listening closely. Their teacher spoke of history and travel. But the children felt something deeper than lessons. They sat on the floor asking gentle questions. Rose answered with patience and warmth. An older woman arrived carrying a small box. Inside were items from her father who worked on trains. She asked Rose to place them inside the car. Not as display but as belonging. Rose found a place near the wall. The woman cried softly and smiled. As seasons shifted, the train car adapted. Warm blankets appeared in cooler days. Fresh flowers replaced older ones each week. Rose maintained the space with loving routine. She learned that care was never finished. It was an ongoing promise. One evening Rose stayed late after visitors left. The sky darkened and stars appeared above. She sat at the table near the window, listening to distant sounds of night. Her life felt fuller than ever before. Not richer in money but meaning. She thought of the day she first saw the rusted shell. How fear and hope had mixed inside her. That choice had changed her path quietly. The train car had changed many paths. All from one decision made with heart. That realization brought her peace. News spread farther than Rose expected. Visitors came from cities and small villages. They did not come for attraction or fame. They came for stillness and reflection. The train car gave them that freely, without asking anything in return. One man said the place helped him forgive. Another said it helped her remember joy. Each story stayed with Rose deeply. She never grew tired of listening. The train car had become a bridge between past pain and present calm. At the end of each day Rose locked the door slowly. She rested her hand on the metal as she always did. The train car stood strong against the night. No longer abandoned or silent. It carried voices even in stillness. That was its true transformation. Rose walked home under quiet skies. Her steps felt light and grounded. She knew challenges would still come. Life would never be perfect or easy. But she had learned something powerful. One act of care can change everything.